Welcome to WHACHACHA'S Wargaming Journey. My name is Sweetness WHACHACHA, and this is a show where I take a three-pronged approach to this hobby, which is to learn, to game, and to craft. Painting and modeling, etc. I don't always explain that part of it, but this episode is called The Bad and the Ugly. The last one was the good, and now we're on to the bad and the ugly. So I probably wasn't as giving as high praise as I should have. I did talk about it in the end a little bit, but the end result of putting together like all my tanks from Germany and all my artillery pieces and all my American tanks and anti-tanks and guns and jeeps and all this, not jeeps, I guess, pretty amazing. They all look so incredible to me, and I was very, very excited about them, having them all, done and looking good. Very, very, very happy with that. But then, as I mentioned on the last episode, I'd gotten my shipment of Flames of War stuff, or had gone and bought my Flames of War stuff, but I had also got a shipment from Battlefront, and so I was waiting for that to arrive, and that brought with it the bad and ugly, unfortunately. So the bad and the ugly. This is going to come in under three general ideas. The first being pewter. Now I opened up my first box of these soldiers and realized that they were all pewter. Now prior to this I had plastic. Everything else I'd gotten was plastic. And hard plastic for models is the best. That's the bee's knees. You're not going to beat it. Pewter has a number of problems. The quality is nowhere near as good. The details is nowhere near as good. It's much more bendable, so you can accidentally bend your model. And sometimes they just come pre-bent. They're just kind of bent. The detail is very muddy. Now that comes with flashing and things. If you don't know what flashing is, it's extra plastic. Like if you had an arm, you might have a piece of plastic here that's not supposed to be there, so you would just clip that out. Now with the muddier details, it's not always that easy to know what you're cutting out or if that's supposed to be there or not. Now, if you look at these guns, I did have a little bit of a solution. I had these Jeeps I was very excited about, and luckily they were plastic, but there was a mixed, like they had their guns and things, as you see here, were looking quite terrible. And so what I did was I found, because there are so many extra pieces on these sprues, I was able to find a couple of extra machine guns, and I cut some extra barrels from tanks to make a workable solution for those. Now, a few episodes ago, I mentioned that I had got a test. I had ordered like a test of a couple of the soldiers, like a pack of 3 soldiers or whatever for $10 or whatever it was, trying to just gauge what the quality was. If these soldiers had been what arrived, I probably wouldn't have continued. I probably wouldn't have ordered these soldiers. So I'm glad it happened in this order because I was so happy with the last bunch of tanks and things that I had. But yeah, muddy detail, hard to know what to cut, bendable, bent parts, they looked pretty bad. Okay, so the second thing is that I mentioned before, there's not a lot of instructions. Now this next batch stuff I got was completely devoid of any instructions. So you just kind of have to guess, and when the details are a little muddier, there's a lot more flashing and there's bent things, you might not know what to cut off. And so like I cut accidentally a machine gun off of one of the plane tire, like the wheels to the plane had a little machine gun coming off it, and I cut it off by accident. It really looked like a piece of flashing. It was bent. And so now I don't have that. It's gone. There's no fixing that. It's too small. So there were some issues like that, which really kind of frustrated. Before the lack of instructions was a little problematic, but here it was exacerbated in a much larger way. For instance, I got these planes, and they come with a couple extra little pieces and on the nose, and I'm like, are these propellers? Do they go on this, do they go on the nose to be a propeller? Or are those just some extra pieces that don't go to this plane at all? Or what happens with these? There are 4 magnets in each one. I thought, okay, does that go on where? I don't know where that goes. I have no idea. Is it for the base? It doesn't make any sense for the base because, you have a short and a tall clear base so that you can have it go higher. And I'm like, well, but you have to glue the bottom in, so that's not for that. Is it to put on the propeller so you could spin it? But there's 4, so you would only really need 2. Who knows what these magnets are for? I have no idea. So that was, so you can see that these problems sort of combine and create a even larger problem. That, like, one thing about these, you know, normally if you have a model, like if you're like, I'm going to put this arm on this body, it will be molded in such a way so there's only one way to, you know, you won't be able to put the arm like this. You'll only be able to put it like this because, you know, it's a hexagon on the one side, a male part, and then the female hexagon coming in, and there's only one way to put it in, right? And so that makes sense. For these, I went to put like the wheels on these planes, and there's no, it's just smooth. It's just, there's no way to tell where to put it. And that might not seem like a big deal, but if you want to put two wheels on and make sure they're on the same spot on each side so it's symmetrical, you just have to make your best guess as to, like, oh, I hope that's about right. And it's not just side to side, it's front and back, you know, so you want to make sure they're, now they could have put some kind of little indentation on each side so you knew exactly where to put the wheel. But another thing is when you're gluing models, you want, you know, a little nub or a spot for it to kind of set so that you put the glue on and then you can hold it and know it's in the right spot while you're waiting for the glue to dry. But here, you know, these parts just want to fly right off. They don't want to, I drop pieces constantly because they're a little heavier than the plastic and stuff. Pretty frustrating with, you know, with the lack of, you know, making ease for these things. And the third thing that was kind of frustrating to me is that, you know, normally when you glue things, you want to be able to have two plastic things. Now, how glue works, if you don't know how some of this glue works, is when you're modeling something, you take two plastic pieces, you put a little glue on each side or whatever, and when you put them together, that glue melts both of those pieces of plastic, and then they kind of like literally join, and it creates a very strong bond. That won't fly off or snap off. Now, because a lot of these models, if you look at these observation units I bought, terrible tread, by the way, big chunks out of them and stuff, that's part of the computer problem. But, you know, these, like I was trying to put the wheels on, you have 4 wheels and you're trying to make sure they're all equal. They don't really nest in there very well. There's no great way to nest them in there. And then also they're much heavier. And they don't want to bond. So I had to buy a different glue, and then, you know, you're holding it on there and trying, you know, because it doesn't nest on there very well and there's no real spot for these things, stuff wants to fall off. The tops, the other thing is, like I mentioned, these observation units were terrible also because, you know, you'll put a piece on top of another piece like this, and, you know, normally you would have something in there to keep that locked on there. And then when you glue it, you can keep it on there very well, but there's nothing really, so it has to be on there just perfectly, and you have to hold it. It's crazy. It was really, really crazy. So that was frustrating. And then even when I was painting these, I would lift up these observation units, and a metal piece or wheel or something might just fall right off, or one of the whole sides of tread might fall real off. So I'm guessing that's just going to be something I'll have to live with and have to re-glue these things maybe a number of times. So just to sum up, I mean, I think, you know, it's like the pewter doesn't look very good. A lot of them are bent. The detail isn't great. The weight is not, you know, the same, you know, so you're holding this heavy part on, try not to glue it to yourself. There's no way to know exactly where it goes. On the model itself, forget about instructions. You got a bunch of pieces that you don't know where they go or what their purpose is, or if they even go to this model. And you're getting these extra parts. Who knows what those are for? They don't bond that great because they're two completely, one's plastic, one is metal. And yeah, and then the flashing, and you're not sure what to cut off. So if I had gotten, now this is a pretty extreme statement, but if I had gotten this shipment first and then gotten those starter boxes, I would never have bought the starter boxes. I would have stopped my hobby with Flames of War here, and I would have pursued a different game. Now that's pretty extreme, but I hated this batch, and I really, like, the quality was bad, and it was not, you know, it wasn't even like it was intuitive. It was the opposite of intuitive. So I was very frustrated, and I would have stopped it there. Now I'm very, very happy that I'd gotten such a wonderful array of tanks and plastic components to start with, and then bought this second batch. So I'm very, very glad it was that order. I think it's better to be excited and then maybe take a hit. And now I know if I'm going to buy any Battlefront product, if I don't, now it's really kind of cool because they do have stamped on there all plastic, or something to the effect of like all plastic or plastic pieces on the box. If I don't see that, I'm not buying the unit, hands down. So that's a little, that was the bad and the ugly there. Now, all the plastic soldiers I got look pretty awesome. Comparing them to, I mean, I'm tempted actually to kind of take the, now I'm leaving the soldiers on the sprue. I'm going to try, do a little experiment and try to paint them on the sprue since they're much smaller and I don't want to lose stuff. I'll let you know how that goes in a future episode. But I'm almost tempted to buy the plastic box of the Americans and paint them in the German colors because I just want to throw those pewter soldiers away. I just don't like them at all. So that's like kind of kick the can down the road. I'm dealing with the armor and vehicles first, and so that maybe will be a future decision that I'll have to make. Okay, so skipping the gaming again, since I'm obviously not gaming yet, but I did watch another learning segment here. I did watch a slew of war films, actually. I watched When the Trumpets Fade, which was a very solid, somewhat in there in the 90s HBO produced movie. Definitely a bit of a downer, a bit harsh on military command and stuff like that, but I thought it was a pretty solid war film. I checked out that's What Trumpets Fade, Into the Storm, which had Brendan Gleeson, who I really love as an actor. He's fantastic. He plays Winston Churchill. You also get, in recent years, we got Gary Oldman, who is another incredible actor, another one of my favorites, as Winston Churchill. So it's kind of cool to see both those actors, and I think they both did a really smash-up job. Maybe it's easy to do Winston Churchill since he is such a character in and of himself. It was interesting to see both of those. I think what's fascinating is hindsight 2020. We're like, of course, fight off the invasion, don't capitulate, weather Dunkirk and keep moving, which is what they did. But it's interesting to consider being alive in those times. You don't know what's going to happen. You know that Germany is knocking on the door, and you have no way to repel the enemy. And so it's fascinating to consider what the vibe at the time would be, what you might have thought at the time, whether you would have the public, and whether you as an individual would think well, we better surrender because otherwise they're going to level our country or whatever, or whether you would think let's fight to the last man and just go out swinging, essentially. So I find that to be fascinating. And also Winston Churchill, of course, is a very colorful character. He's like Teddy Roosevelt, where I know as a young man and a kid and stuff, you just those are characters. Teddy Roosevelt and Churchill are both figures where you just feel yes, I love these characters. They're so interesting, and you're on their side or whatever. But it's interesting to think of I wonder, knowing how politics are so divisive today and how our country is so divided in America here, I wonder how I would, whether I would be hate Churchill, or whether he's a character that, I say character, but a personality is a better word, sorry. It's interesting to think how you might feel about that now, what the difference would be if you were living at that time, or whether you would hate her Churchill. But he's fascinating to me. I think is very interesting. I also listened to the Montmayor, which is another YouTube channel that I've started listening to. I found fascinating. Battle of Savo Island was a great episode. It really highlights the interesting things, the naval battle. I've been listening to a lot of naval battles, which doesn't help me for what I'm doing here and playing, but they are very fascinating. How important fog of war is important in any battle, but especially on the open seas in that time. It's very, very interesting. And Battle of Savo Island went very poorly for America, but Montmayor, I would highly recommend checking this out. It's very interesting to see how how luck and risk can play out in your favor and not so much in your favor. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So yeah, okay, so that's my episode for today. Hope you found it interesting. I didn't want to be too negative, but I was very unhappy with that. Overall, I'm still very excited about the Flames of War stuff. I think it looks amazing for the most part, and looking forward to learning and modeling and stuff some more. So